The Startup Owner's Manual by Steve Blank and Bob Dorff. Picture this. It's the late 1990s, the height of the dot-com frenzy, and there's this company called Webvan that everyone's buzzing about. Their pitch? Revolutionary. Online grocery shopping with same-day delivery straight to your door. No more wrestling shopping carts through cramped aisles, no more waiting in endless checkout lines. Just click a few buttons, and boom, fresh groceries at your doorstep. They raised an absolutely mind-blowing $800 million. They did everything by the book, hired a heavyweight CEO, built these massive, cutting-edge automated warehouses that look like something out of a sci-fi movie, complete with miles of whirring conveyor belts, bought entire fleets of shiny delivery trucks, created a gorgeous, user-friendly website. Their early customers actually loved it. When they went public, Wall Street valued them at over $8 billion. That's more than the three biggest grocery chains in America, combined. They looked absolutely unstoppable. Then, in just 24 months, Webvan completely imploded, bankrupt, gone. All that money, all that impressive technology, all that promise, vanished into thin air. So what went wrong? This question haunted Silicon Valley for years. Here's the kicker. They didn't fail because the technology didn't work. They didn't fail because they were sloppy or lazy. In fact, they executed their business plan almost flawlessly. They failed because the business plan itself was fundamentally wrong. They built this magnificent billion-dollar machine to serve customers who didn't actually exist the way they imagined. They scaled up this enormous operation for a market they never truly understood. They had all these answers lined up perfectly, but nobody had bothered to ask the right questions first. For years, people treated Webvan as just another cautionary tale. But this serial entrepreneur, named Steve Blank, saw something deeper. After launching 8 different startups over 21 years in Silicon Valley, he'd watched this same tragic pattern play out again and again. Brilliant founders with genuinely world-changing ideas would burn through millions, sometimes billions, because they were following a map that led straight off a cliff. So he decided to draw a completely new map. Over the next hour, I'm going to walk you through the framework that Steve Blank and his co-author Bob Dorff created in the Startup Owner's Manual. This isn't some collection of helpful tips. It's a fundamentally different way of thinking about building a company from scratch. By the time we're done, you'll understand the single biggest mistake that kills startups, and you'll have a practical step-by-step guide to make sure yours survives. This is the playbook that sparked the entire lean startup movement and forever changed how entrepreneurs build companies. To really appreciate the revolution Steve Blank started, we need to understand the old world he was trying to demolish. The world that built Webvan. For most of the 20th century, if you wanted to start a company or launch something new, everyone followed the same playbook. It was borrowed from massive, established corporations like General Motors or Procter & Gamble. Every business school taught it, and it went something like this. First, you get this brilliant idea. You lock yourself in a room and write this enormous business plan. Basically a document that lays out your vision, your market research, your 5-year financial projections, everything. This document becomes your Bible. Next, you use that plan to raise money. Lots and lots of money. Then you go dark, into stealth mode. You hire a team of engineers and tell them to build the product exactly as you described in your plan. This is what they call the waterfall method. A long, one-way street where everything flows sequentially from concept to final product, with no U-turns allowed. The team survives on cold pizza and this unwavering belief that if they just build it, customers will magically appear. Meanwhile, your marketing team starts preparing for the big launch moment. They create slick brochures, plan this huge press event, hire a fancy public relations agency to generate buzz. The sales team starts hiring reps to handle the expected flood of orders. Finally, after a year, maybe 2 years, you launch. Big party, press coverage, champagne, and then you sit back and wait for the money to pour in. This whole process feels organized, professional, serious. It's how big companies launch new toothpaste flavors or next year's car model. And for them, it actually works. Because they already know their customers inside and out, they understand their market, and they know exactly what features people want. But here's the terrifying truth that Steve Blank uncovered. For a startup, this entire process is poison. It's a recipe for spectacular failure. Because it's built on a series of deeply flawed, often fatal assumptions. Blank identified what he calls the 9 deadly sins of this old model, but they all stem from one core misunderstanding. The first and most dangerous sin? Assuming you know what customers want. On day one, a startup has literally 0 customers. What it has is a founder's vision, which is really just a collection of untested guesses. The old model tells you to treat those guesses as concrete facts. It tells you to spend millions of dollars and years of your life building a product based on what amounts to a faith-based initiative. You operate under this dangerous delusion that all the answers you need are already inside your own building. The second sin flows naturally from the first. Assuming you know exactly what features to build, founders fall head over heels in love with their product idea and proceed to cram in every feature they can possibly imagine. They spend months, sometimes years, perfecting a product in complete isolation, only to discover after launch that customers don't actually care about most of those painstakingly crafted features. It's like spending 2 years building an elaborate Swiss Army knife with 100 different tools, when all your customer really wanted was a simple, reliable pair of scissors. The third sin is this obsessive fixation on the launch date. Everything becomes a frantic sprint toward that one magical day. This ready, fire, aim strategy leaves absolutely no room for learning, for mistakes, or for iteration. It assumes every single step will go perfectly according to plan. But, as that old military saying goes, no plan survives first contact with the enemy. And for a startup, your customer is that first contact. Webvan was the perfect straight-A student of these sins. They executed their plan with precision. They burned through $1 billion building warehouses before they'd validated that enough customers would actually pay for the service to make the economics work. By the time they launched big, they discovered that their assumptions, made years earlier in a conference room, were completely wrong. The market had shifted. Customers behaved totally differently than their spreadsheets predicted, and by then it was way too late. They'd built this massive, expensive organization, perfectly designed to execute a plan, not to learn and adapt on the fly. And this brings us to the single most important insight in the entire book. The epiphany that changes everything. A startup is not just a smaller version of a large company. Take a moment with that. It sounds simple, almost obvious, but it's actually a profound distinction that most people miss. A large company executes a known business model. It already knows who its customers are, what they want, and how to reach them. Its job is to grow and optimize that existing model. A startup, on the other hand, is a temporary organization designed to search for a repeatable and scalable business model. The key word there is search. A startup begins its life with nothing but a series of educated guesses, a collection of hypotheses. The founder's real job isn't to execute some rigid plan, but to systematically turn those guesses into proven facts. And there's only one way to do that. Get out of the building. This is the central mantra of the entire book, the phrase Steve Blank is most famous for: there are no facts inside your building, so get outside. The facts live where your customers live. They're in their offices, their homes, their daily routines and frustrations. Your job is to go on this journey of discovery, to find those facts, and to use them to actually build your business. The process for doing this is called customer development. It's a 4-step framework that stands in direct opposition to the old, disastrous way of introducing products. Instead of writing a massive business plan, you start with a completely different tool, the business model canvas. Picture a single sheet of paper divided into 9 boxes. This is your canvas. These 9 boxes represent the fundamental building blocks of any business. Who are your customer segments? What's the value proposition you're offering them? What problem are you actually solving? How do you reach them through your channels? What kind of customer relationships will you build? How will you make money through your revenue streams? What key activities do you need to perform? What key resources do you need? Who are your key partners? And what does your cost structure look like? On day 1, you don't write some detailed 40-page plan. You just fill these 9 boxes with your best guesses, using sticky notes. We think our customers are teenage gamers. We think they'll pay a monthly subscription. We think we'll reach them through YouTube ads. This canvas isn't a static document. It's a dynamic, living scorecard. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to take every single one of those sticky notes, every hypothesis, and test it in the real world. This brings us to the heart of the customer development process, which is guided by 14 core principles that Blank calls the Customer Development Manifesto. We don't have time to dive into all 14, but they all orbit around a few powerful central ideas. The first, as we've established, is that there are no facts inside your building. The founders themselves absolutely must be the ones getting out there and talking to customers. You cannot delegate this critical step. Employees and consultants don't have the same skin in the game. They won't pick up on the subtle cues, and they're often terrified of delivering bad news to the boss. Only a founder can hear a potential customer bluntly say, "I would never use this," and have both the authority and the motivation to instantly pivot the company's direction. The second big idea is to pair customer development with agile development. That old waterfall method of engineering is just too slow and inflexible for a startup. You need an engineering team that can build the product iteratively, in small, rapid cycles. You go out Monday, talk to customers, learn something crucial. By Friday, your engineering team should have a new version of the product ready that incorporates that fresh learning. This rapid feedback loop of build, measure, learn is the actual engine that powers a lean startup. The third, and perhaps the hardest pill to swallow, is that failure is an integral, necessary part of the search. In a big company, if you fail to hit your quarterly numbers, you're probably getting fired. In a startup, the plan is just a collection of hypotheses, and honestly, most of them are going to be wrong. Failure isn't evidence of incompetence, it's learning in action. When an experiment fails, you don't fire the founder or shut down the company, you change the business model. This leads directly to the concept of the pivot. A pivot isn't just some tiny tweak, like changing the color of a button on your website. A pivot is a substantial change to one of those 9 boxes on your business model canvas. It's recognizing that your initial guess about your customer segment was completely off, and you need to target an entirely different group of people. Or that your revenue model is fundamentally flawed, and you need to switch from a subscription model to advertising supported. The story of Groupon is a legendary example of pivoting done right. It started as a company called The Point, which was basically a social media platform for organizing people to solve collective problems. The company was struggling badly, running out of cash, but the founders noticed something interesting. The most popular campaigns on their struggling platform were ones where people banded together to get a group discount on a purchase, so they tried a quick experiment. They launched a simple blog and posted just one deal per day. The very first offer was 2-for-1 pizzas at the restaurant on the first floor of their office building. 20 people bought it, and in that single moment, Groupon was born. They completely pivoted away from their original, failing idea and sprinted toward this new, obviously promising direction. That pivot eventually led to a company valued at over $12 billion. Successful founders don't stubbornly cling to their original vision when reality is screaming contradictory facts at them. They're ruthless in their search for truth, and they have the guts to pivot hard when the evidence demands it. Now let's break down the 4 specific steps of the customer development process itself. The entire framework divides into 2 main parts, the search and the execution. The first 2 steps, customer discovery and customer validation, are all about the search phase. Step 1 is customer discovery. The goal here is beautifully simple. Find out if you've actually identified a real problem that a specific group of customers desperately wants solved. The fundamental question you're trying to answer is, do people actually care about this? This is where you take your business model canvas with all those hypothesis-filled sticky notes, and you get out of the building. You're not trying to sell anything yet. You're playing detective, hunting for clues. You find people you think might be your customers, and you have deep conversations with them about their problems, their needs, their daily frustrations. You're trying to understand their world so thoroughly that you can literally see it through their eyes. In this phase, you're hunting for a very special, rare type of person, the early evangelist. This isn't just your typical early adopter who likes shiny new gadgets. An early evangelist is someone with 5 very specific traits. 1, they have a problem. 2, they're fully aware they have this problem. 3, they're actively, urgently searching for a solution. 4, the problem is so painful that they've already cobbled together their own makeshift, often ridiculous solution. And 5, critically, they have a budget or the authority to actually spend money to solve it. These rare people become your partners in discovery. They're so desperate for a real solution that they're willing to buy an early, rough, probably buggy product from a brand new, unproven company. If you can't find any early evangelists after extensive searching, you probably don't have a problem worth solving. While you're out there talking to potential customers, your engineering team isn't building the complete, fully featured product. They're building something called a minimum viable product, or MVP. The MVP is the absolute smallest possible version of your product that can test your core hypothesis. Its sole purpose is maximum learning, not maximum features. For a physical product, an MVP might be a simple prototype or even just a presentation showing how the product would work. For a web or mobile product, it could be as simple as a landing page that describes your value proposition and asks visitors to sign up if they're interested. This is called a low-fidelity MVP. Its only job is to test whether your understanding of the customer's problem is even remotely correct. Customer discovery itself unfolds in 4 distinct phases. Phase 1. You clearly state all your hypotheses on the canvas. Phase 2. You get out of the building to test the problem. Do you actually have this problem? How painful is it really? How are you solving it right now? Phase 3. You get out of the building again, but this time you're testing your solution. You show them your MVP and ask, does this actually solve your problem? Phase 4. You analyze all the data you've gathered and make a critical decision. Do you verify your hypotheses and move forward, or do you pivot and fundamentally change your model? Most startups cycle through this discovery loop multiple times. Each cycle brings them closer to what's called problem/solution fit. This is that magical moment when you've genuinely found a problem that customers deeply care about, and you have a solution that they honestly agree solves it. Once you believe you've achieved problem/solution fit, you move to step 2, customer validation. Now the goal shifts. You need to prove that you have a repeatable and scalable business model. The question you're answering now isn't just, do people care, but can we actually build a real, profitable, sustainable business around this? This is where you attempt to get your first real orders, your test selling. You take your MVP, which by now should be a more polished, high-fidelity version, and you try to actually sell it to your early evangelists. You're still not trying to build some massive sales organization. In fact, doing that would be one of the biggest, most common mistakes a startup can make, what Blank calls premature scaling. Hiring a huge sales and marketing team before you've validated your business model is the absolute fastest way to burn through all your cash and crash spectacularly. Instead, the founders themselves, maybe with help from a single sales closer, are still the ones out there doing the selling, but they're selling with a completely different purpose now. The goal isn't just to generate revenue, it's to create and document a sales roadmap. A sales roadmap is your repeatable playbook. It's the documented, step-by-step process you've discovered for systematically turning a complete stranger into a paying customer. It answers crucial questions like, who's the actual decision maker? How many meetings does it typically take to close a deal? What are the main objections we consistently need to overcome? What's our real customer acquisition cost? For a web or mobile business, customer validation is all about optimizing what's called your get, keep, and grow funnel. Get. How do you acquire customers and activate them? You run dozens of small, inexpensive experiments with online ads, social media campaigns, and email marketing to discover what actually works. Keep. How do you retain your customers and prevent them from leaving? You analyze their behavior patterns and build smart loyalty programs. Grow. How do you get your existing customers to spend more money, or even better, to enthusiastically refer their friends? This is where you measure and optimize your viral loop. The validation step is essentially a series of pass/fail tests. If your hypothesis says that for every dollar you spend on ads, you'll generate $2 in revenue, you run a small, controlled test to see if that's actually true. If it is, congratulations, you've validated that piece of your model. If it's not, you pivot. You change your pricing, your channel, or your customer segment, and you test again. You stay locked in this validation loop until you have hard, quantitative proof that your business model genuinely works. You have a repeatable sales process, a predictable, reliable sales funnel, and a profitable financial model. Only when you've achieved this magical state, what's known as product/market fit, are you finally ready to advance to the next two steps, customer creation and company building. These are the execution steps. This is where you finally floor the gas pedal. In customer creation, you take your now validated sales and marketing playbook and you start spending serious money to scale up dramatically. You ramp up your marketing spend to create massive end-user demand. And in company building, your scrappy organization transitions from a temporary startup focused on searching into a stable, mature company focused on executing. This is where you hire proper VPs of sales and marketing, build formal departments with structure and hierarchy, and establish the processes needed to manage a rapidly growing company. It's a journey from organized chaos to professional structure, from constant searching to disciplined execution. And often, this is exactly where the founding entrepreneur, that passionate visionary who thrived in the chaos and uncertainty of the search phase, may no longer be the right person to lead the company forward. Sometimes, they're replaced by a professional, operating executive with experience scaling companies. It can be a bittersweet, even painful moment, but it's actually a sign that the startup has succeeded in its core mission. It found a repeatable, scalable, and profitable business model. The entire philosophy of the Startup Owner's Manual can be distilled down to this. It replaces the old, dangerous model of build it and they will come with a new, proven model of learn, build, measure, and iterate. It transforms entrepreneurship from this mysterious black art based on luck, timing, and intuition into a rigorous science based on evidence and systematic testing. It doesn't guarantee success. Nothing can, but it dramatically increases your odds of finding success before you completely run out of money. It gives you an actual map for navigating the dense fog of uncertainty that surrounds every new venture. What I find so genuinely powerful about this book is its raw honesty. It completely demystifies the entire startup process. For so long, we've been fed this seductive myth of the lone genius founder who has this perfect, fully formed, world-changing vision from day one. They see the future with crystal clarity, they build it exactly as imagined, and the world immediately bows down in awe. The Startup Owner's Manual strips away that comfortable myth and replaces it with something more realistic and, frankly, way more empowering. It shows us that the successful entrepreneur isn't some mystical fortune teller. They're both a scientist and an artist rolled into one. A scientist who rigorously designs experiments and ruthlessly tests their assumptions against cold, hard reality. And an artist who has the vision to see what could be, but also the humility and courage to dramatically change course, to pivot, based on what they learn directly from their customers. This book is genuinely dense. It's definitely not a light novel you breeze through on a lazy weekend. As the title clearly states, it's a manual, a comprehensive, step-by-step how-to guide that you keep right by your side throughout the entire, often grueling journey of building a company from scratch. It's packed with practical checklists, detailed diagrams, and specific instructions for every single phase. It's essentially a reference book for the entrepreneurial trenches. But the core philosophy is incredibly simple and applies to way more than just tech startups. Whether you're thinking about starting a YouTube channel, launching a small local business, or even just proposing a new project at school or work, the fundamental principles remain the same. It's about not falling madly in love with your first idea, but instead falling in love with your customer's real problem. It's about having the humility to openly admit that your initial ideas are just educated guesses, and having the discipline to rigorously test them before you bet your time, your money, and your reputation on them. So how can you start applying these powerful ideas today, right now, even before you finish listening to this? First, for any idea currently rattling around in your head, grab a single sheet of paper and try sketching out those 9 boxes of the business model canvas. Don't overthink it or make it perfect. Just ask yourself these basic questions. Who exactly is my customer? What real value am I providing them? How will I actually reach them? How will I make money? Just the simple act of putting your assumptions down on paper is a surprisingly powerful first step. It forces brutal clarity and immediately reveals the gaping holes in your thinking. Second, and this is both the most important and the most difficult step, pick just one of your most critical assumptions and design a simple, cheap way to test it this week. Most importantly, find 5 people who you think might actually be your customer. Don't try to sell them anything. Don't even talk about your brilliant idea at first. Just ask them thoughtfully about their problems and frustrations. Say something like, "Tell me about the last time you tried to," and then just listen carefully. Listen way more than you talk. This is the first small but crucial step of getting out of the building, and it's hands down the most important one you can take. The journey of an entrepreneur is often described as a classic hero's journey. It's a dramatic call to adventure, a bold departure from the safe, known world into a realm filled with uncertainty, real fear, and constant doubt. What Steve Blank and Bob Dorf have given us in the Startup Owner's Manual isn't a magic guarantee that you'll slay the dragon and claim the treasure. But they have given us something arguably more valuable, a detailed map and a reliable compass. They've shown us that the path forward, while incredibly difficult and often painful, isn't a complete mystery. It's a process. It's a learnable science. And by thoughtfully following it, you're not just building a business. You're building a better, stronger version of yourself. One that's more resilient, more genuinely curious, and more deeply in tune with the world you're trying to change. That was a summary of the Startup Owner's Manual by Steve Blank and Bob Dorf. We've touched on the core, transformative ideas today, but I'll be completely honest with you. A summary can only show you the basic map. The real journey, the real transformation, happens when you take the actual steps yourself, when you read the full book and let its detailed, practical guidance truly sink in. It's in those quiet moments when a specific checklist or a simple, powerful phrase from the book suddenly clicks into place and solves a problem you've been wrestling with for weeks. This summary is your starting point, designed to help you see clearly if this manual is the right guide for your particular journey. If anything we've explored today has sparked even a small fire in you, grab a copy of the book. Reading it isn't just passive learning. It's actively preparing for the adventure of a lifetime. The link to the book is waiting in the description below. Also, if you found this summary genuinely valuable and it gave you a fresh perspective, please take just a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. That simple action ensures you won't miss our next deep exploration into another potentially life-changing book from the billionaire's bookshelf. Let's keep learning and growing together.